welcome back to my channel. This is SC Coleman, author, and in this video we are going to continue talking about the academia organization and how it relates to the database known as ERIC, or clearinghouse, whichever you will, information sharing system, and how all of the pieces of information on that system relate to a particular organized operation. Now, we've already covered a lot of paperwork on this, so let's go ahead and continue with the same theme. This first document is called School, Family, and Community Partnerships, Your Handbook for Action. You like that word that we hear a lot, action. So in this context, we're going to look at what that means. It's the second edition with the particular name Joyce L. Epstein. Now, this document is copyright 2002 by Corwin Press Incorporated, obviously before the whole Jeffrey Epstein stuff became popular information, or rather common. Now, to begin with, this has a gag order, if you will, on it. All rights reserved. When forms and sample documents are included, their use is authorized only by educators, local school sites, and or non-commercial entities who have purchased the book. Except for that usage, no part of this book may be reproduced or utilized in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, recording, or by any information storage and retrieval system without permission in writing from the publisher. Now, why would they want such tight control over this content? And to begin with, this gag order, if you will, starts first. So you know there's going to be some pretty juicy stuff inside of this document. For information, Corwin Press Incorporated, Thousand Oaks, California, also lists Sage Publications, United Kingdom, and India. Sage Publications, India, PVT Limited. Printed in the United States of America, Library of Congress publication, blah, blah, blah. So to start with, we're going to look at certain words here. We've got focuses of partnership activities and examples of school community partnership activities. Community-centered includes community beautification, student exhibits and performances, charity, and other outreach. I think we all know what that means. Next, we have the state leadership activities section. The state departments of education need to declare a written policy on school, family, and community partnerships. Enactments to support the implementation of the policy, and an office or department responsible for providing that assistance to districts and schools statewide. These activities show that the state officially supports the development of partnership programs. And of course, we're seeing a lot of the proliferation of this stuff, but it apparently starts here with this book from 2002. As most of these things go, we are discovering that a lot of the heinous and awful activities and operations that are happening on U.S. soil are in fact under the directives of academia. The designated state leader for partnerships should form a leadership team with representatives from other organizations. In the State Department of Education and other organizations, e.g. regional staff development offices, state PTA, teacher, and administration unions, who work to improve school and family community partnerships. Periodic meetings of the leadership team ensure that everyone will know how their projects are contributing to the overall goals of improving partnership programs in districts and schools statewide. And I think we get the idea that this whole partnership term is being used, as with all of these other documents, as a cover for other operations, other means, and other objectives. Next, we get to a particularly egregious pledge. And just so you know, a pledge is another word for an oath. Now, this requires a signature from a parent/guardian. And one of the things at the bottom that you're promising to do is, I will volunteer to work at school or at home to conduct activities to assist my child and the teacher, class, and community. I will encourage my child to contribute talents and time to homeschool, to home, school, and community. And of course, what they're talking about is a pledge to produce for them and for them to utilize free labor. That is particularly important. For the student, I will take notices from home and school promptly and deliver notices to my teacher from home. I will participate in parent-teacher student conferences and inform my family about school activities and events. That's, of course, turning the student into a go-between, a messenger boy. And then below that, I will welcome volunteers to my school and work with parents or others who assist me, my classmates, my teacher, or my school. I will contribute my talents and time to my family, school, and community. I mean, who would sign this if they understood what the implications of it are? Right? You got people who, in many cases, barely survive on 3 jobs, and yet they're promising to offer free labor to the school system, so then that school system can leverage the free labor to push them out of the labor market, as it were, by supplanting them for all of the different retail activities that we read in other documents, bake sales, selling goods at the farmer's market, etc. I mean, the school system is involved and engaged in every type of commercial business possible, and they're conquering it, and they're leveraging free labor to do it from ignorant people, and all of those people are suffering because this school system has those programs in place. Now, the teacher pledge states they will come to school each day with a positive attitude. Isn't that kind of creepy that they would include that in a pledge? And of course, at the bottom, I will arrange ways for parents and other volunteers to use their time and talents to assist my students in school, in my class, or at home. I will vary schedules to encourage families to attend events, assemblies, and celebrations at school. I think we all know what that means. And then administrator pledge, I will arrange ways for parents or other volunteers to use their time and talents to assist students at the school. I will also encourage families to attend events, assemblies, and celebrations at school. And then below that, I will help to develop a comprehensive program of school, family, and community partnerships at this school. And as we went over before, the whole partnership label is a cover for something else. Now, here's a title that has not aged well: Epstein's 6 Types of Involvement. Some pretty important ones to notice here is setting home conditions that support children as students at each age and grade level. Now let's go ahead and look at that wording for a minute. Setting home conditions, so that means organizing the conditions of the house or whatever, or home, whatever that may mean. But the important one is support for children as students. Not children as children, but children as students at each age and grade level. At each age and grade level. That does not specify, as most people would think, that the age stops at a certain point. It's at each age, which means adult learners, quote unquote. Yes, that's a term that they use as well, and we've read that term in many places in previous videos, and we'll see it more in subsequent documents. Volunteering, improve recruitment, training, work, and schedules to involve families as volunteers and audiences at the school or in other locations to support students in school programs. Free labor. Basically. Involve families in decisions. That's not that families make the decisions, it's just involving families in the decisions. Parent organizations, that's a big one. So one thing that we're getting into is that when this use of the word parent is leveraged, it generally has a broader context in these documents. A parent does not have to be biological. A parent can be a member of a parent organization. Collaborating with the community, coordinate community resources and services for students, families, and the school with businesses, agencies, and other groups to provide services to the community. So that's another way for them to exploit free labor on behalf of their conquest and occupation. Now here's another one: improve student behavior. Volunteers for school patrols in hallways, in the cafeteria, on the playground, or in other locations to increase or maintain students' good behavior. That's just disturbing. The way that they just easily talk about a patrol in the hallways in an effort to increase or maintain good behavior. That brings to mind a particular meme or joke about that the whipping will stop when morale improves. I'm sure many have seen that or heard of that before. Next we have PTA/PTO sponsored speaker series for parents on student development in mental health, medical, and other specialists. Just awful. And now on to the next one here. Type 1, parenting basic responsibilities of family. Isn't that nice that these people get to tell you what your responsibility, your basic responsibilities as a family are? Of course, on the top one they have safety. That's funny because if you're in fact following the responsibility of safety, then you would never, ever, ever hand a child over to these disturbing and vindictive evil institutions ever. And then, of course, as I said before, home conditions that support children as students, as I said, not as children, but as students, whatever they decide the definition for that is. Of course, they'll change the definition of child if it suits them, or basically anything else. Who need it? This is an interesting line here. It says, provide information to all families who want it or who need it, not only to the few who attend workshops or meetings. The few. Enable families to share information with schools about background, culture, talents, goals, and needs. And we're going to get into how that's leveraged for spying operations particularly, or the espionage, clandestine intelligence operations, that sort of thing. Workshop is not only a meeting. Here they're defining their use of the term workshop is not only a meeting to be viewed, heard, or read, or the content is not only to be viewed, heard, or read. It's a very interesting redefinition is the word here. Redefinitions, that's the word they use. And results for students, we have awareness of importance of school. So I think we all know what that means, and that's part of the proliferation of the endless propaganda that you see throughout TVs, movies, fake news, broadcasts, and articles and whatnot, talking continuously and without the unquestioning sanctity of the school system. You're not allowed to talk about any of the quote-unquote scandals, and if you are, you won't find mention of it in the heavily controlled propaganda system because all of that is in fact controlled by academia. Representatives may include parent liaison, PTA/PTO officer, parents with children in different grades, families from various neighborhoods. So they're obviously working on the redefinition of parent. A parent representative, for instance. Get ready for action. This alternative small group activity may be used following a presentation on expected results of the 6 types of involvement. And of course, I think we all know what the action is that they're quote-unquote calling for. Now here's the interesting thing right here. See, this is the basis for CAPTCHA. That really irritating and annoying crap that everybody has to go through when they sign on to a website that says, are you a robot? And here you can see all of these workshop exercises are the foundational basis for the CAPTCHA nonsense that we all have to deal with whenever we log into a computer or a website. And all of that stuff is evidence that it originated with academia. And considering how prolific it is and its originator, you can surmise essentially that the academicians control the internet. The answers to the puzzles are for facilitators only. Do not duplicate as a workshop handout. There's your CAPTCHA answers for you. And of course, as I said before, the main publisher on this is Joyce L. Epstein. State leadership takes many forms. Activities to promote statewide partnership programs include writing state goals. Remember, writing state goals and policies for partnerships. That is where the directives come from. The entire state government, as far as we're aware, acts like a bunch of tyrannical buttheads because their orders are being written and coming from academia. Which, of course, academia is involved in so many other heinous things that they could fill volumes, if not an entire library. Providing training and developing programs of family and community involvement, conducting conferences to share best practices, making grants to districts and schools for improving partnership practices, evaluating work in progress, recognizing and rewarding excellent practices, creating a state network on partnerships, and performing other strategies. Like what a military does. District leadership activities including writing district goals and policies for partnerships, conducting team training workshops for schools' action teams for partnerships, making school visits with principals and action teams for partnerships, awarding grants to schools for initiating or improving partnership projects, conducting conferences or workshops for all schools to share best practices, and performing other leadership activities, blah, blah, blah. Write a policy that outlines and discusses state or district expectations and commitments for comprehensive programs of school, family, and community partnerships. That is exactly what it sounds like. The policy should include enactments that specify the services that the state or district will provide to help all schools enact the policy. Establish an office or department with an expert leader and adequate staff to facilitate the development and continuous improvement of programs of school and family and community partnerships. Small districts may designate a leader to guide schools with their work on partnerships. And again, partnership is not the normal way we use that word. That's not what it means. It essentially means hierarchical, dictatorial, mandated control. Develop interdepartmental connections to strengthen leadership on partnerships in their states or districts. Identify funds for school, family, and community partners to cover staff and program costs. State and district leaders must identify specific budgets to support staff salaries, blah, blah, blah. States should plan to invest from 15 cents to $1 or more per student per year to be used at the state level to fund the salaries and benefits of a state director of partnerships, staff, and state leadership activities and services. And of course, as we know, they balloon it out and it becomes a whole thing, and then they gobble up land, they gobble up resources, and they gobble up any type of position a regular person might hold in the market. Mom and pop shops, brick and mortar stores, or even online retail stores all get pushed aside for these programs. Funds may support initial and advanced in-service education and training. And of course, we know in-service and service education really is another word for leveraging free labor for conquest. And training grants for districts and schools to initiate or improve partnership programs, statewide or regional conferences, and other state leadership functions to assist all districts or schools in their work on partnerships. Now here we've got a breakdown of schools, levels of funding, major sources of funding, and other sources of funding. Now this is divided up schools, districts, and states. Now what's interesting is that you find across a lot of these documents the term N equals and then a number. For schools, N equals 356. Major sources of funding include drug prevention and general funds. Other sources of funding listed is the American Legion Partnership. Isn't that crazy? The American Legion? This lists an AM South grant, Florida, at-risk funds. Now that's a particularly important word today because of all the at-risk stuff going on. Commonwealth of Massachusetts corporate sponsors, DODEA extra duty compensation for teachers and leaders, Department of Defense schools. Eastern Michigan University Grants, Michigan. FAST Grants, Wyoming. Or Wisconsin. Yeah, that's Wisconsin. WI. Home and School Funds, Illinois. Leona Group, Michigan. Parents as Partners Funds, Minnesota. And Partners in Education, West Virginia. Now for districts, we have N equals 45. Major sources of funding include bilingual education and drug prevention and general funds. Department of Defense funds is listed on other sources of education, no surprise there. And remember, this is from 2002. This is before the particular executive order listing that only departments of defense contracts would be prioritized, and thus all contracts at all were put under the cover of Department of Defense. Next you have Department of Human Services, Wisconsin. Family Preservation Grant, Wisconsin. Lake County Education Association, Florida. Teachers Union. Teachers Union is funding these things, obviously. Blueprint 2000 funds. Learning Readiness Funds, Minnesota. Mentors SB 65, California. That sounds like a small business administration grant. School Board Funds, Florida. State Academic Mentoring Grant, California. State Compensatory Education Funds, Maryland. State DESEG Grant, Massachusetts. State of Michigan. Next, states N equals 6. Drug Prevention General Funds. And this also lists a superintendent's discretionary funds for major sources of funding. Of course, there's other names of things listed here. I'm just picking out and highlighting what appear to me as the most interesting. The Federal Claude Pepper Act, Connecticut. Martha Holden Jennings Foundation, Ohio. And the Teacher in Service Funds, Utah. It is best to keep the length of the TIPS activities to 2 sides of one page. This keeps copy costs down and requires teachers to focus their attention on the quality of questions rather than on quantity. Second, all activities should be clear and attractive with computer graphics where relevant. Finally, all the activities may be produced on colored paper to help students and families identify and enjoy the activities. For example, a math teacher assigning TIPS weekly may choose to copy each assignment on blue paper. Now here's the biggest reason why them singling out the color blue as far as blue paper goes is important. Blue envelopes, as used and intentionally to be used, which eventually probably will be used across the entire country, for passage through checkpoints and roadblocks by allegedly Down syndrome people. Of course, we know that this blue pass will just be another special privilege for the academic controllers who want to essentially rule the planet without contest. So them highlighting blue paper in this particular document from 2002 is very indicative, considering all of the other uses of the color blue, the United Nations and whatnot, for internationals. Now we have Dear Family Partner. Don't you like the way they twist these words? And a sincerely student signature on the TIPS math test. Now listen to some of the phishing questions on this so-called homework. Family Partner again. List the ages of all your family and find the mean age. Find the mean shoe size of all your family. Round half sizes up. Find the mean height in inches of all your family. Now that sounds similar to a phishing scam that was known to go across Facebook and other social media, where they had you post your date of birth for a particular picture or color and other types of information you would need to steal somebody's identity for, say, credit and other nonsense. But the phishing questions on this homework continue. And again, it's called TIPS. Interesting name. People use averages or means to report survey results. Poll your family members or friends, including at least one family member. How many hours each day do you work? At school, at a job, or at home? This is espionage. That's something that needs to be understood. This is espionage by enemy elements. How many hours each day do you sleep? Names of people you surveyed, number of hours, blah, blah, blah. Average, mean. Explain your results to a family member. Discuss with your family member why would I find the same means if I surveyed only friends my age, why or why not. Find the average amount of time that people you selected work and sleep each day. Now, why would they want to know that? Dear parent, family member, this has a parent signature. Epstein, J.L., Salinas, K.C., revised 2000. Teachers involve parents in schoolwork, tips, interactive homework. And then this also says photocopying permissible for local school use only. It's very understandable why they don't want analytical individuals, and especially those of a military bend, to be reading this stuff. Again, sincerely, student signature on this particular one, and family survey, of course, again. Can you think of any foods or other products that use viscosity? How fast or slow the flow as part of the advertising to get you to buy it? Family member's idea is my idea. Why is high viscosity, slow flow a good feature or a bad feature of a product you use? What is low viscosity, quick flow a good feature or a bad feature of a product you use? So they want to know things that you would want to know if you're involved in the intelligence community in a targeting capacity for not just for espionage. So you've got different components in intelligence communities. You got people that all they do is collect data and they store it and they analyze it and they compile it together and then they put it into reports. Then you got people who want to target someone. When you want to target somebody, you only need particular types of information. First of all is the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now the how comes into people's routines. When are they out of the house? When are they in the house? It's the same thing that somebody who's trying to case the joint would want to know. When they want to steal something, they need to know when people are at work, when they're gone, and what they eat, and what they do. And all of those things are points of exploitation. When they go to the bathroom, who they talk to, what their friends are, how they look, identifying features, all of that stuff is contained in the phishing questions of these homework assignments. Find a family member to interview. Who is it? Ask, in what decade were you born? 1960s, 1970s, etc. What is one hairstyle that was popular when you were my age? For boys, for girls. What hairstyle do you have when you were my age? Did your family agree with your choice of hairstyle? What is your favorite current hairstyle? Why? What is your least favorite current hairstyle? Why? And then they have you draw a picture. Perhaps that's where a lot of these sketch artists get their work from. Homework assignments to students. Next to each cue line, write a question about your topic. Use your questions to interview a family member. Write the family member's answer next to each line. A. Select another topic for comparison. For example, clothing styles, ways to have fun, or rules at home or school. What topic do you choose? Blah, blah, blah. And just more of the same stuff here. We've got interview a parent or other family member who is at least 20 years older than you. Ask the following 3 questions. You record your family partner's opinions compared to 20 years ago. Have the following social conditions gotten any better, stayed the same, or gotten worse? Please tell me in what way. Education, environment, crime, violence, taxes, unemployment, poverty, healthcare, race relations, standards of living, individual freedom, family values, and foreign relations. And that is what you would call canvassing. I did numerous events in canvassing, and these homework assignments are canvassing information, obviously among other more insidious details. Which 2 of the above topics do you think have been helped by governmental programs over the last 20 years? In what way? You record your family partner's opinions. Which 2 of the above topics do you think you could use more or less help from governmental programs over the next 5 to 10 years? In what way? You record your family's opinions. Use a separate page to write your views based on your interview of a family partner. Attach your work to the assignment, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that is providing more evidence of areas for them to exploit. If they read that and find, oh, there's a disagreement in the family, well, that's an area that they can prod. And if multiple people in a community have competing opinions, well, then that's a tool for division. And why on earth would they ever want to do that? Considering the fact that they have done it, we'll find some examples. Now, the next one is a textbook study in cultural conflict. Speak of the devil. Kanawha County, West Virginia. National Education Association, Washington, D.C. Teacher Rights Division. This is from 1975. National Education Association, 1201 16th Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. Among the NEA conclusions are the following. It is the basic principle of our Constitution. Now understand, they are not talking about the U.S. Constitution. They are talking about the Constitution of the NEA. That is a thing that they do a lot. They pretend to be talking about one thing, but they're actually talking about something else. That no group has the right to impose its religious value systems upon the public schools. Education's fundamental purpose is to prepare students for good citizenship and for constructive lives by instilling in the ability to think critically, reason, and analyze, relate data, and to see behind deceptive facades. An essential task of public education is to treat students honestly, inform the history of this and other nations, and to provide them with a vast diversity of literature so that they may understand and appreciate the many cultures, races, and ethnic groups that comprise our society. Don't you love how they just declare for themselves what they're going to be doing, and nobody else has any say in it, let alone the people actually involved? Teachers and students must be free to discuss controversial issues so that students may acquire the skills needed for intelligent analysis of issues, and the West Virginia laws governing textbook selection place the responsibility for textbook selection where it belongs, with the final decision-making authority vested in the elected Board of Educators. That is exactly what it sounds like, even though they're obviously using doublespeak. Escalation of protest. It was not until school opened on September 3rd that the full intensity of the protest became evident. During the first 2 weeks of September, the schools were boycotted and picketed. Picket lines were up around the businesses, industrial plants, and coal mines in the upper Kanawha Valley. On September 4th, an estimated 3,500 miners walked off the job on a wildcat strike, ostensibly in sympathy with the protesters. Local efforts to obtain assistance from the state police were unsuccessful. On September 7th, a citizens group, the Kanawha Coalition for Quality Education, formed in support of the books. On September 10th, the protesters shut down the city bus system, and on September 11th, the board voted to remove the disputed books from the school system, pending their examination by Citizens Review Committee, to be composed of 18 members, 3 members appointed by each of the 5 board members, and 3 appointed by the board member-elect, who would elect the chair of the review committee. This stuff is so typical. This compromise on the part of the board was at first accepted and then rejected by the protesters. The board's move also prompted protests from the Kanawha County Education Association, Schoolmasters Club, and the Kanawha County Association of Classroom Teachers, who urged that teacher members be placed on the review committee and questioned the board's right to remove the legally adopted books. Now, legally, again, is a overly used term by the academicians and really only means reduced to writing. But they use it in place of everything from lawful, criminal, or whatnot, everything. During the following weeks, public education in Kanawha County was halted by the politics of violent confrontation. There were exchanges of gunfire. Oh. School buses were shot at, cars and homes firebombed. Anti-book picketers arrested and released. Schools were vandalized and dynamited. Between September 12th and 16th, the Kanawha County schools were closed and all extracurricular activities were canceled. Probably so the teachers and educators and other embedded creatures of this system could go out and do all of the things that they're talking about. At book protest rallies, dissension became evident among the ministers leading the anti-book movement, some of them urging continuance of the school boycott and others favoring a return to school and work. Demands were made for resignation of the superintendent and the 3 board members who had voted for adoption of the books. And of course that sounds like more instigated garbage, where 2 faces of the same coin are playing off each other to cause division and conflict, and everybody else doesn't know what to do or where to look or why all of this is happening. Classic CIA. it must be acknowledged that the conflict might have erupted regardless of what the school system did or did not do to prepare for it. Yes, they prepared for it, obviously, because it was their operation and their plan. And considering the temper of this community and this era, there may have been nothing the school system could have done to diminish its intensity. Let's read that one section, considering the temper of this community and of this era. That is a perfect phrase for you to understand their perspective and how hateful and contemptuous they are of the people in the, as it said, community and era. There is a possibility, however, that had positive preparatory or responsive steps been taken at pivotal moments, the public schools of Kanawha County would not have made national headlines in 1974, and the academic freedom of its classrooms would have been preserved. Now, of course, when they say would not have made national headlines, that's more of like a pat on the back. We got our fame, as it were, all part of the plan. It is not only the conclusion of this panel, it is a basic principle of our Constitution that no group has the right to impose its religious value system upon the public schools. Even if there were constitutional or moral sanction for such imposition, who would determine which of all the different theistic belief systems would prevail? Moreover, the point made early in this report bears repetition here. There can be no teaching of literature or history that does not concern itself with philosophical, moral, or political values, and there can be no discussion of such values. They may not offend some members of some religious organizations or political party, or perhaps cause them to re-examine their own persuasion at some time. That doesn't sound like that haughty, nasty, malicious, and arrogant phrasing that they always say when they do something to you and then say, now, think about what you've done. There is no way that this probability can be evaded. There is neither moral nor constitutional justification for the teaching of religion in the public schools, but there can be no teaching or learning in the public school classroom without the exploration of values, philosophies, ideologies, and religious beliefs. The way in which these matters are handled by the classroom teachers, however, can give the students an appreciation not only of the students' own beliefs, but also of the beliefs of other beliefs and cultures. That is, of course, brainwashing. They get to dictate to you and to everybody else how things are, and they get to reinvent and redefine anything they please. A major disadvantage of the establishment of traditional public school alternatives in Kanawha County would be that if it would tend to isolate further the mountain people of the county. It would tend to isolate further the mountain people of the county. That does not sound like somebody from that place talking about that place. Sounds like somebody in a lofty tower somewhere on the other side of the planet, possibly even in Europe, talking derogatorily about those that reside in West Virginia. If such a proposal is to be put in effect, therefore, the panel would urge that the staff members assigned to the alternative schools be individuals from urban as well as rural backgrounds. It is also vitally important that the administration assign to these schools staff members who are highly competent in the more traditional methods of instruction and who possess true sensitivity to the culture of the area in which they teach. We're going to find out just how much they really hate the people that live in these areas, but something that I would like to note is that the word alternative school, as far as my own experience, relates to the place that quote-unquote all bad kids go. The National Education Association believes that decisions on which school learning experience will develop a student's talents are best made by a teacher who knows the learner. Teacher quality depends on freedom to make such decisions. Teachers must select instructional materials without censorship. They mean without censorship from anyone but the people doing the censorship, of course, the people writing this crap. Challenges of the choice of instructional materials must be orderly and objective under the procedures manually adopted by professional associations and school boards. So yeah, what I just said, they are going to be doing the censorship. And if somebody doesn't like it, well, tough, because these people are the ones that run the show, according to them, because they elected themselves. The association urges its affiliates to seek the removal of laws and regulations which restrict the selection of a diversity and instructional materials or which limit educators in the selection of such materials. Let's read that one part again. The removal of laws and regulations which restrict the selection of a diversity of instructional materials or which limit educators in the selection of such materials, such as the U.S. Constitution. When judgment of the professional staff deems the issues appropriate to the curriculum and to the maturity level of the student. When they deem it appropriate. Now the next document, Effective School Partnerships, October 2015, much later than that one. Type and nature of collaboration. Collaborator used to be a word that meant somebody who was collaborating with the enemy. Cross-phase federations, federations consisting of 2 or more schools of different phases, elementary and high school. Performance federations, federations consisting of 2 or more schools, some of which are high-performing and others which are low-performing. Size federations, federations consisting of 2 or more very small schools for a very small school or medium-sized school. Mainstreaming federations, federations consisting of 1 or more special schools and 1 of the more mainstream schools. Faith federations, federations consisting of 2 or more schools of the same denomination. And academy federations, federations of 2 or more academies similar to charter schools run by the same sponsor within a federation or chain. So that goes into the same thing I was talking about before, which is that they want their own academic republic, of which among themselves they make the unilateral decisions of ruling their empire across the globe and no one else. Hard Governance Federation, established under statutory regulations made by Under Education Act 2002, the Federation has a single governing body shared by all schools. Schools share common goals and often management and leadership appointments. Executive head teacher working across all schools, and also this document is from the UK. Soft Governance Federation, established under statutory regulations made under Education Act 2002, each school retains its own governing body. Through the Federation has a joint governance strategic committee with delegated powers. Schools share common goals and maybe some management appointments. Soft Federation, a non-statutory collaboration that can be established without following regulations whereby each school has its own governing body. Federation is a joint governance/strategic committee without delegated powers. Schools share common goals. Joint committees can make the recommendations, but individual governing bodies must authorize decisions and plans. There may be common management positions with protocol to underpin the shared posts. Informal/loose collaboration, a non-statutory collaboration that can be established without following regulations whereby each school has its own governing body and the group of schools meet on an ad hoc basis. Schools share common goals and work together on informal agreements and ad hoc issues. Unlikely to have shared staff. Since 2007, one area in which the educational landscape has shifted has been the considerable increase in the number of academy schools across the system, particularly over the last 5 years. The latest figures indicate that there are over 4,500 academies in England, including more than 2/3 of all secondary schools. Furthermore, the number of academies working collaboratively as chains has increased. Yeah, what a surprise. This list, Converter Chains, describes groups of schools operating under a formal collaboration without an overarching sponsor. Multi-academy trusts. That is like exactly how it sounds, like a trust fund. A MAT is a single legal entity with responsibility for the multiple academies within it. So you're talking about multiple schools funneled into a trust as though they were property of the trust. That is particularly interesting. One board of trustees or directors governs the MAT, but there is often delegated to individual academies. For example, the MAT can establish separate governing bodies for individual numbers of schools and delegate a range of powers, or an advisory body for each academy with no delegated powers. Whichever option is chosen, ultimate control lies with the MAT. Under this model, the Secretary of State for Education has a master funding agreement with the MAT and separate supplementary agreements with the MAT for each of the member academies. As highlighted above, MATs bear many structural and operational similarities with federations, and indeed many converter chains started out as hard governance federations. Umbrella trusts. Under this model, a faith body or a group of schools sets up an overarching charitable trust, which then establishes individual or multi-academy trusts to run the schools coming under the umbrella of the overarching trust. Their wording is so stupid, but it's always the same thing. Take everything out of the hands and control of the regular people that it affects and put it into the hands and the control of a few puffed up, self-appointed, self-elected tyrants that you are faceless, you can't find, and are hidden behind layers and layers of fronts. The Secretary of State for Education has individual funding agreements with each academy trust. The members and governors are appointed by the umbrella trust, which can choose to have minority or majority control according to how well a school is performing or in order to maintain prior relationship, e.g. between a diocesan board and a church school. Collaborative partnerships, these are more informal and loosely structured than the previous two models. Secretary of State for Education has individual funding agreements with each academy trust. The head teachers or converting academies agree to work together in areas where they see some mutual benefit, but there is no shared governance, and the collaboration is very much a loose one, though they may have written agreement to consolidate the collaborative activity. National change characterized by non-profit charitable ownership, management of a number of schools, shared leadership and management structures, a joint mission and possible pedagogical approach, and a central hub providing central support, accountability, and direction that can also operate over large geographical areas between different regions of the country. That sounds similar to what we have. School-led chains, sharing many of the features of national change, but they are initiated and led by successful schools rather than nonprofit or charitable organizations, and often operate on a regional or local basis. Local federations develop initially among groups of local authority schools. These are locally constructed groups of schools that choose or are encouraged to come together in partnerships. These partnerships are institutionalized through some reconfiguration of the school's governance arrangements, such as the appointment of an executive head teacher of the federation or the creation of a joint governing body. I mean, this stuff is just ridiculous. But as we get there, the word partnerships, but more importantly, we also get the word authority schools. And it's just, the wording here is quite ridiculous. Collaboratives, groups of schools that have chosen to cooperate or share resources in areas such as continuing professional development or common services, but without modifying their leadership or governance structures. A further dimension of complexity is teaching schools. That is a particular evil that the pseudonym of Richard Mitchell talked about in that individual or individuals' particular works. These are high-performing schools designated as outstanding by Ofsted. They are in receipt of central funding to support other schools across a number of key areas, such as the organization and provision of initial teacher training, school-to-school support, professional development, leadership development, succession planning, and research. Obviously, a lot of these are called teachers' colleges, or the teachers that teach teachers, that sort of thing. And obviously, the people making decisions are, as we can see, insulating themselves behind many different levels of fronts. You have the classroom. Then you have the classroom for the teachers in the classroom. Then you have all of these behind-the-scene partnerships and links and all that stuff. And then you got the people that are in charge of those, and so on and so forth. There are currently more than 600 designated teaching schools in England. Through the size and structural arrangement of the alliances, they lead varies considerably from collaborative arrangements with unclear membership boundaries to chains of schools with clearly defined membership structures. However, to date, no published research attempts to map the terrain of teaching schools and their alliances. This next document, University of Kentucky Southeast Community College, Exploring America's Communities Progress Report. Cumberland, Kentucky, American Association of Community Colleges, Washington, D.C., National Endowment for the Humanities, Washington, D.C. This is January 1997. 1996, the Kentucky Southeast Community College. Now notice, that word makes the letters SCC, such as the Supranational Communications Center. Interesting. So the Southeast Community College, SCC, participated in the American Association of Community Colleges Exploring America's Communities project, which works to strengthen the teaching and learning of the American history, literature, and culture at U.S. community colleges. SCC's primary goals include introducing the project to the school colleges, institutional advisory board, and faculty, linking a U.S. history and a Spanish course, securing institutional funding to support the project, acquiring appropriate library resources, holding an essay competition among local 8th grade students, and conducting professional development workshops for SCC faculty. Through email, voicemail, and presentations, information about the project has been disseminated to faculty, staff, and boards. Library materials have been acquired through private funding. 8th grade students who participated in the essay competition discussed what it means to be an American, and workshops devoted to the project's themes were held for the 10 winners and their families. Issues that the history and the Spanish class share have been identified and partially integrated into the courses, and the process of seeking official permission has been initiated. Remaining tasks for the program include integrating the project's themes into classes at all 3 of SCC's campuses and obtaining official permission for linking the history and Spanish language courses. Students and faculty at SCC have identified the most divisive aspects of American society as race, religion, and social economic class. Of course they have, because those particular topics and labels were designed exactly for that purpose. University of Kentucky Southeast Community College Exploring America's Community Progress Report. Permission to reproduce material has been granted by J. Golatschek, Gollatschek, in National Conference on American Pluralism and Identity Program book, New Orleans, Louisiana, January 18 through 19, 1997. Southeast Community College, interestingly enough, has the moniker UK. That's strange. Now, some people might say that's the University of Kentucky, as it says here, University of Kentucky. Of course, those initials are also for the United Kingdom. Perhaps it's just a coincidence. Perhaps it only happens to coincide with those particular elements. Southeast Community College was established in 1960 as part of the University of Kentucky Community College system. The primary goals of our college's action plan, there we get that word action again, like action or Amy Acton, to enhance teaching and learning about American pluralism and identity at Southeast Community College have been to secure institutional funding to support the project, to identify and acquire library resources to support the project. That sounds quite similar to the job of the Supranational Communication Center idea. Notice reproduction basis. This document signed by reproduction release blanket form on ERIC system encompassing all classes of documents from a source organization and therefore does not require blah blah blah. And of course, again, that's ERIC, that particular egregious communication system that the academia uses. Center for Research on Education, Diversity, and Excellence, 2002. National Study of School Effectiveness for Language Minority Students' Long-Term Academic Achievement. Oh, look at this. The report was prepared with funding from the Center for Research on Education, Diversity, and Excellence, CREED, a national research center funded by the Office of Educational Research and Improvement, OERI, of the U.S. Department of Education under Cooperative Agreement number R306A60001-96, July 1st, 1996 to June 30th, 2001. The findings and opinions expressed here are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the positions or policies of OERI. Of course, again, this is more crap done under the research label, which, as we know, is a cover story for very expansive, treasonous operations. Copyright 2002, Center for Research on Education, Diversity, and Excellence, University of California, Santa Cruz. All inquiries should be addressed to Dissemination Coordinator, CREED/Cal, 4646 40th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. The center is designed to move issues of risk, diversity, right? Issues of risk sounds like at risk. Diversity and excellence to the forefront of discussions concerning educational research, policy, and practice. Central to its mission, CREED's research and development focuses on the critical issues in the education of linguistics and cultural minority students and students placed at risk by factors of race, poverty, and geographic location. CREED's research program is based on socio-cultural framework that is sensitive to diverse cultures and language, but powerful enough to identify the great commonalities that unite people. Yes, identify them so that those can be avoided, and division will be the reigning element. Research on the interaction of family, peers, school, and community examines their influence on the education of students placed at risk, right? Students that are placed at risk. Research on integrated school reform identifies, documents successful initiatives. Research sites chosen. In order to have extensive, well-collected data, we knew from previous research experience that it is necessary to collect data from many more sites than required, because many factors influence longitudinal data collection, such as student mobility, change in assessment instruments used by the school district, changes in state policies, new data management systems installed that do not allow retrieval of historical records, and changes in school management that bring about unexpected program changes. And then, of course, this is leveraging the moniker of school, the cover, if you will, the edifice or office, the auspice of school, to conduct espionage operations in order to track individuals and pretty much everyone, in order to track everyone. The remaining school district is presented in more general terms to preserve anonymity. Not a surprise why they would want to preserve anonymity. Two of our student studies examine the academic achievement of newly arriving immigrants. Two other studies focus on students from ethno-linguistic groups with cultural and linguistic heritages that predate the beginning of the United States. Students of French culture and linguistic roots in the Northeast and students of Spanish-speaking heritage in the Southwest U.S. The fifth study includes both new immigrants and U.S.-born Hispanic students. Of course, for most people, that particular line wouldn't mean anything, but for some of us, it means a lot. Student records sample. The total number of student records collected in the 5 districts featuring their support is 210,054. One student record includes all the school district records for one student collected during one school year, such as the student's background characteristics, which might include socioeconomic status as measured by free and reduced lunch, level of English proficiency and primary language proficiency upon entry to the school district, and amount of prior formal schooling. The grade level and school programs that student attended, and academic achievement measures administered to that student during the school year. Each school district is different in what data they collect, and we found it necessary to customize our generic plan to meet the specific needs and characteristics of each school system. And now you understand why they are so hostile and antagonistic towards anybody who even deigns to mention somebody not having their child in a school system. They need that information to be leveraged against everyone in that community, because these are enemies. And so if you say you're not going to put your child in the school system, you are talking to an enemy. They will use whatever method they can to compel the placement of that individual to be leveraged for free labor, for espionage, and for all of these other treasonous acts. We also visited some schools and individual classrooms on each visit to clarify issues in classroom implementation. But our collaborative researchers, the bilingual /ESL resource staff, were our main sources for collecting data and on analyzing general patterns in teachers' practices. For the smaller school districts where a survey was feasible to use, we collected data from each bilingual /ESL teacher on a survey instrument that we developed for this study that was designed to categorize their general teaching practices, their teaching certification credentials, and general practices within their school building regarding the languages represented among the student population. There's a lot of heinous activities that is particularly hidden among the English as a second language, ESL, and research. This data collection instrument is provided for the appendices of this report. The surveys were administered and verified as accurate by the bilingual /ESL resource staff who regularly visit the teachers' classrooms and provide staff development assistance as needed, meaning directives, right? These are the people that are actually running the operations. They come in from out of nowhere and dictate to everyone there how things are going to be run, and then they analyze it, and then they move on to the next place. And they're faceless, and they do whatever they want, and they dictate whatever they want, and nobody else even knows they exist as far as the parent, the actual parents, not the parent representatives or parent partners or any of that nonsense. Collecting quantitative data. The following overview outlines some of the important sources for data that we collected from each school system that is stored on magnetic media and machine-readable files, and the process that we went through to prepare this data for the analysis. First, we assisted each school district to identify and gather their existing data from the National Study of School Effectiveness for Language Minority Students. Many sources available in the district, e.g. registration centers. You like that word there? Registration centers. Sounds pretty dystopian to me. Language minority Title VII student databases, student information system databases, testing databases, and other databases collected for state and federal reporting. To start this process, we provided a list of potential variables that could be included in the study in the bilingual /ESL research staff of the school district. These met with us to jointly determine which variables were important to collect and available in machine-readable form. In some cases, existing databases had to be supplemented with new data in order to answer research questions about local concern. Second, we assembled all data records from all sources and linked them by student ID to create year-by-year databases. Third, using relational database software, we compiled multi-year databases from the annual databases, created an internally consistent data structure across the years. Imagine taking a drink for every time they said database. As each data set arrived, we organized and restructured and cleaned the data to identify any problems in the data sets in preparation for the initial exploratory, descriptive, and cross-sectional analysis. We also converted each data file from its initial format, FileMaker DBase 4, Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, or fixed-length ASCII records into the DBF format or .dbf format of Visual Fox Pro, the database package and programming language that we use. The data cleaning and data restructuring stages required much time and effort for several reasons. First, historical data were being collected from each school district for as many years back as each school district had quality data available. The new data was being collected with each school year, resulting in a large number of annual data sets from each school district. Second, we helped school districts to collect and merge all their data sources, which we were often housed in separate offices. This stage represented a lengthy and complex process of reformatting, merging, and restructuring the data files to achieve compatible data structures and data coding protocols among the various data files originally created by different offices to meet a variety of different needs. We arrived at data structures and coding schemes that allowed us to address and answer each different research questions, involving different units of analysis and analytical requirements. That is what somebody in the military would call intelligence analysis. Well, collection and analysis. And let's see how it's used. Racism against the Mayan population in Yucatan, Mexico. I bet we know how this is going to go. How current education contradicts the law. They write the laws, so of course they'll contradict it because it's just a big game. Except they're cheating at the game that they write the rules for. Please address all correspondence to Juan Carlos Mijangos-No, Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, Facultad de Educación, Calle or Street, 41, whatever, just there's an address in Mérida, Mexico. Annual meeting of the American Educational Research Association, San Diego, California, April 14th, 2009. And of course, this is going to be in English. Discriminatory situation in the Mayan population, concept of neo-racism, uncover a phenomena, original population. Interesting, right? The paper also shows how the phenomenon contradicts the Mexican laws. So they are inventing this narrative with the design of causing conflict so that then when the crisis occurs, they can take control by being the ones to solve what they created. Which of course means also eliminating anybody else that might challenge them in that position. Discussions about racism and discrimination against the Maya indigenous population in Yucatan can seem excessive. since it is a Mexican state where the public declarations in the politically correct language praise and acknowledge the original inhabitants of the land, the Mayans. What a convoluted paragraph right there. Nowadays in Yucatan, politicians with less care common citizens avoid pronouncing themselves racist. Nowadays in Yucatan, politicians and with less care common citizens, that's like calling somebody an illiterate or a peasant. They're less care common citizens. Ha ha! The milieu. Right? Avoid pronouncing themselves racist. You should just declare yourself what you are. Federal educative authorities in Mexico and in the states of the country will guarantee that the indigenous population has access to obligatory bilingual and intercultural education. They want it to be obligatory, and will adopt the necessary measures to ensure that the education system respects the dignity and identity of the people independent of their language. Also in higher education, they will foment the linguistic, intercultural education, multilingualism, and respect to the diversity and rights. Yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. That's academia dictating to the so-called government, which is essentially the governing body on behalf of this clandestine academic republic, which obviously took control through fraud and subversion rather than an actual open and fair contest. Primary and secondary school are obligatory basic education. There's that word again, obligatory. In fact, that law is not fulfilled for the Mayans. You are going to do it, regardless of whether you want to or not. Or as they say, resistance is futile. 52 kindergartens were shut down, although kindergarten has been legally mandatory since 2006. That means documentedly, that means that you have a paper out there that charges you to do it, and you have no choice. And this person's complaining that it's essentially speaking a dead letter. That's what it means when something might be written down, but nobody does it. My team and I interviewed 287 Mayan speakers who reached higher education. Oh, go figure. There's Mayan speakers in higher education. Yeah, there's double speakers in higher education, and of course they manifest crap out of thin air anyway. With their testimonies, we can make a long catalog of examples of discrimination that resulted in Mayans dropping out of school. Oh, how convenient. The men and women we interviewed were the survivors. Oh, here is one person's testimony. This crap is just awful, isn't it? The Mayan child is forced to learn the new language, Spanish. They're forced to. And this paper, of course, has the use of the word obligatory and mandatory in multiple occasions, but on the other side of the fence, which is an obstacle, and as they are advancing through the classes, the boy feels he cannot learn. There are many things that he does not know. Also, he thinks that he was not born for school. Then all that is absorbed by the students, perhaps the form to express it is not the best, but discrimination absorbs, stealing from the child his faith in his capacities, and it sinks him in the marshes of daily failure. The disapproved homework, the prohibition to speak Maya, the lack of enthusiasm due to hunger, to the cold, to the poor sanitary conditions that foster the growth of bacteria more easily than the joy of learning, personal communication. Now, isn't that a nice little bleak picture? That's the donate to us to save the sad boy on TV who's got a fly on the camera, right? Or the background green screen in the nice hotel. It's just, we all know about these types of tactics. But more importantly, that's what they think about the Maya. They're hungry, they're cold, and they have poor sanitary conditions. How many times has that particular stereotype been used as the excuse for nasty operations and child trafficking under the guise of humanitarian aid? We launched a 2-month radio campaign involving them to participate. Only 2 people called us. Haha. We went to the schools asking if anybody knew Mayan speakers, and the answer was always the same: no. because they invented it and they continue to invent it as a means for conquest. Now, this next paper on the applications of international development, if you will, today's demands for global awareness, the community college dimension. Brookdale Community College, BCC, in New Jersey sponsors a program in Ecuador's largest city of Guayaquil, which allows Ecuadorian natives a quality college-level education in English and Spanish. American students and faculty, the opportunity is to learn about Ecuadorian culture. You would think somebody who lives in Ecuador would know about Ecuadorian culture, but no, they don't, because they need to be taught about their true Ecuadorian culture by a couple of puffed up academicians that live in New Jersey, essentially, and business. Yes, of course, they also need to be taught about business, because they don't know how the right way to do business is. In all ways, it must benefit the academic republic. The University of South Carolina, Edison State College of New Jersey. Isn't that oh wow, it's the University of South Carolina is involved in this, of course, and the Edison State College of New Jersey. They began in 1984 Partnership for Service Learning, and there's that word again, service learning. Students volunteer in community service and development projects. Community service is also a term used by quote-unquote judges in lieu of jail time. By Dr. Thomas F. Richards, Chair, Political Science Program, Brookdale Community College, Lincroft, New Jersey, October 1994. Examples of our interconnections with peoples and events around the world have made the words interdependence, multiculturalism, and globalism three of this decade's most important words. As Pico Iyer described this phenomenon in a fall 1993 essay in Time magazine. Yeah, phenomenon, sure. In ways that were hardly conceivable even a generation ago, the New World Order is a version of the New World writ large. A wide open frontier of polyglot terms and post-national trends. A common multiculturalism links us all, call it Planet Hollywood, that's creepy, Planet Reebok, or the United Colors of Benetton. Kids in Perth and Prague and New Delhi are all tuning in to Santa Barbara on TV and wriggling into 501 jeans while singing along to Madonna latest in English. CNN now reaches more than 150 countries, and American Football Championship pits London against Barcelona. And no wonder we have such a global occupation and problem going on today. Current generations don't discover ways to effectively function. Jeff Brownoff, Global Education Associates, uses the term undeciders. Enlarged international dimension beginning in elementary schools and continuing through college. Teacher education programs should include courses in international education. And of course, I'm highlighting the really the sections that really jump out at me right here. What I believe to be the important elements. Most important, anyway. My own institution of Brookdale Community College similarly evidences such student limitations, for very few of our students seem to have done much critical thinking about global or even domestic issues. There's that word again for you, critical thinking. It's like the use of the term legal. When asked about their views on global or national issues, they answer with cliches, because they're trying to answer the way that the person that they're talking to usually wants to hear, which is a repetition of the same brainwashed nonsense. Few of the students have much understanding of the difference between liberal and conservative views, between Democrats and Republicans, between Cuba and China, between South Africa and South America, Indians and Americans, well, there's another stupid word they're trying to invent, between Iraq and Algeria. Because those people don't know, according to this person, what they should know. In recognition of the serious deficits in information, and indeed handicaps when functioning in our rapidly changing interdependent world, we at Brookdale Community College a suburban county-sponsored institution which has over 170 faculty and more than 12,000 day and evening students, have sponsored for over 9 years a college program in Ecuador's largest city of Guayaquil. University of South Carolina, which has a matriculation agreement with Brookdale. Brookdale/Guayaquil was established by Dr. Albert C. Ade, that's E-Y-D-E, or Ide, however you say that, who in 1984 left his position as Brookdale's Director of International Education to become headmaster of the El Colegio Americano de Guayaquil, an accredited American school serving kindergarten through 12th grade students. And that's exactly what I said before. They are sending their minions there to reshape the landscape of Ecuador. I think we all know what that means. That is infiltration for invasion. The U.S. students wishing to come to Ecuador, Ecuadorian students to study in the United States, program consequently opened in fall 1985 in a former private residence, which was broken up into classrooms. Dr. Ide now serves as director of Brookdale's programs in Ecuador. That program is currently housed in its own facility, with classrooms bearing the names of individuals who have served at the college in the past. That sounds familiar. Faculty members, 70% of these being U.S. educators and the other 30% Ecuadorians who hold degrees from U.S. universities. Shocking. North American faculty come from Brookdale's mainland campus and from the University of South Carolina, Columbia, and they participate on a rotating basis, typically spending one semester to 1 year in Ecuador. BCC/G also serves as host of the Partnership for Service Learning. And there you've got those the words there, partnership and service learning together. An international program for academic and social service volunteers, which is operated in Ecuador through Brookdale. Students help build community centers. Help build. Sure, they only help to build. They couldn't possibly be the primary free labor force leveraged under the auspices of education. Libraries, schools, houses, and latrines. They may also teach in local schools, provide health and child care services, aid in recreational activities, care for the mentally retarded, work in child care centers, or work as assistants in adoption agencies. And there you have your child trafficking angle. Adoption agencies are universally known as the primary vehicle for stealing children from one area and transporting them to another for disturbing and heinous ends. Currently underway is yet another project designed to promote successful local businesses through a training needs study. Yeah, I'm sure we know what that means. Faculty members from Brookdale's New Jersey campus have also been coming to Ecuador to offer classes for elementary and secondary teachers so as to help strengthen the teachers' curriculum development and teaching skills. Efforts are now also underway to expand this program, to do so by joining with other public and private Ecuadorian educational institutions in the region to offer expanded ongoing courses in elementary and secondary education. And of course, in that entire paragraph, there's not one comma or appropriate grammatical structuring. The program attempts to approach the students with an individualized as well as a group-oriented course that not only engages the students in relevant ideas, thinking, and analysis, but also empowers him or her to become a more articulate and socially responsible citizen of the world, as well as his or her community and nation. Yep. Finally, the class may visit and be briefed at local embassy, visit a factory, go to the offices of government official, visit a local slum, or visit a local farm. And of course, those are foot soldiers going out to these places to do things like bribery, extortion, collusion, you name it. And of course, little CIA agents that can mix in with the crowd, pretending and posing to be one of the quote-unquote students, or researchers, whichever you prefer. In the bigger picture of today, a warning from the American Council on Education remains profoundly true, namely that is in spite of programs such as the Brookdale/Guayaquil, there is a need to increase financial aid so that more students from all income levels can study abroad, including adult and part-time students. And that is where you get U.S. aid from. The U.S. International Agency for Development, USAID. And nevertheless, it's hoped that the Brookdale/Guayaquil program can serve as one of the number of models that can be utilized by other community colleges throughout the nation so as to promote better student-faculty sensitivity to understanding of and positive dialogue and involvement with the needs of interdependence, multiculturalism, and globalism. In the light of this very negative and very urgent socio-political condition, international exchanges in education in general, including community college students and faculty, must become commonplace. For such exchanges can assist in no small measure to illuminate the many connections between real events in the world and the day-to-day lives and actions of other students and teachers, rather than requiring simply a recitation of facts and figures. Such exchanges in general, as well as through the study of political sciences as one vehicle, encourage our citizen students and citizen teachers to think critically about the strengths and weaknesses of the problems of political, economic, and social systems of other nations as well as those of our own country. That when they mean critical thinking, they mean the use of the word criticize. The next document, Comparative Analysis of Performance-Based Payments for Teachers in Santiago de Chile and Standard Payments in Guayaquil and how it can be implemented in Guayaquil. So yes, that's exactly what it sounds like, leveraging funding and money as a leash, a control mechanism. Carlos Sepertiguay Seminario and Joel Andres Zhuangzheng. It's not a standard Chilean last name as far as I'm aware. December 10th, 2023. Now I've only highlighted two particular sections on this. A well-educated workforce is essential for economic growth. As mentioned by Harvey Beavis, 2003, as cited in Nodden, 2000. There is a strong link between quality of teaching and level of student outcomes, meaning that by having an incentive such as extra payment will contribute to long-term economic prosperity as citizens to be more skilled and productive. Many people call those things like bonuses and stuff, and that's a common tactic used in corporate circles to leverage the appropriate behavior from their rather lazy and incompetent workforce, as they love to talk about their people. Yeah, their people. They own them, you know. Anyway, long-term economic prosperity, citizens will be more. Having a PBP system, and there we go with the excessive acronyms as always, would create a new labor market for teachers. This means that talented teachers would have greater opportunities where they're recognized and encourage retention. On the contrary, it also discourages the least capable teachers, and a new demand and supply market for professors is created. With this new movement between schools, among school-based rewards, it can increase the precision of resource allocation by having more clear organizational goals and resource alignment. That's a long way of saying exactly what I just said, basically. This is due to the fact that new principals, directors, administrators, etc. are evaluating teachers more meticulously compared to a non-performance-based payment school. In a study from China, it was concluded how inadequately among teachers in different schools was reduced. Nevertheless, inequality among teachers within the same school has increased. In 1996, Chile introduced the SNED, S-N-E-D, the National Evaluation Performance System. That doesn't sound like Spanish. Was created in Chile with the goal of identifying outstanding public or subsidized private schools, Misala and Urquiola, 2013. It provides financial incentives and recognition of staff for the best performing schools every 2 years. Yeah, this is called reinventing the wheel and adding names for the same concept that's been around for a long time. In other words, SNED is a program of economic incentives for schools. There are 3 steps in the SNED process. SNED works in the following manner. First, schools are assigned into homogeneous groups. These are based on 3 traits: rural or urban area, local region, type of schooling offering, primary only, primary and secondary, or special needs. Developing flexible dual master's degree programs at UPAEP, or Universidad Popular Autónoma del Estado de Puebla, and OSU, Oklahoma State University. In 2006, UPAEP, Universidad Popular Autónoma del Estado de Puebla, and OSU, Oklahoma State University signed a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Here we go again with that. type of wording, memorandum of understanding. We've looked at a couple egregious examples of those, to develop more than 20 dual master's degree programs. This special partnership has allowed students from Mexico and the United States to study 2 master's degree programs in 2 languages in 2 countries, and in approximately 2 years. 5 years ago, both higher education institutions realized that allowing students to travel between 2 countries and develop intercultural competencies to work efficiently in international environments, we understand the need to develop intercultural competencies in our students, and that's, of course, so that they can do whatever they want and leverage their domination and control with ignorant people and ignorant foot soldiers who don't understand what they're actually doing. And then those people take the fall for what these academics are actually carrying out. The key of this successful agreement is with the option to transfer up to 50% of the total credits of the master program from one university to the other. After the signing of the general, the different colleges from both institutions were invited to participate in the design of each dual master degree. Each degree in college and each university of UPAPE and OSU analyzed with their counterpart the academic requirements in the different master's programs, as well as the required and the elective courses. After a deep analysis of the curricula, each institution decided which courses the students should take at each institution, as the core/required courses and the courses that were allowed to transfer, as well as the others to take the host institution. The addendums to the initial general MOU dual master's degree programs, which included the course matching, were signed by one of the deans of the different schools and colleges involved in the process. 25 different dual master's degree programs were developed and launched at once 6 years ago between both universities in Mexico and the United States. There is a special consideration in the design of the programs at each institution that factors the success of the negotiation of the dual master's degree programs between UPAP and OSU. The considerations are the innovativeness, flexibility, and interdisciplinary of their curricula, which allow the deans of the schools and colleges to select the courses that the students should take at the home institutions and the courses the students should take at the host institution. Yikes. Talk about excessive wordiness. And they do that partly to lull anybody who's not involved in this stuff into a general state of docile misunderstanding. Because what they're talking about here is very apparent, as I've stipulated in other videos, and also I'm pretty much beating that dead horse here in this video too. State of Durham County's young children. Durham, North Carolina is a vibrant community that is growing and changing rapidly. Children in Durham come from numerous ethnic, racial, and national backgrounds and speak dozens of different languages at home. The diversity contributes to the rich cultural tapestry that makes Durham a special place to live and work, but it also possesses problems. In order to support the development of its youngest residents, Durham community leaders formed a task force in 2016 and requested the Duke Center for Child and Family Policy prepare a report that provides a snapshot of the children ages 0 to 8 living in Durham County today. I wonder why they would want to know that. The resulting document is intended to be a tool for informing policy and community decisions. Adverse Childhood Experiences. ACE. The ACE questionnaire is a particularly heinous document that I've covered in multiple formats, including letters distributed around local communities. While official poverty measures reflect a family's income, a lack of resources in other areas can affect the children's well-being. And there you go. That's an excuse to steal children from poor people. And of course, they don't mention why those people are poor at all. Maybe it's because academia is pushing them out of every possible job or market field they could ever be involved in and suppressing them into poverty on purpose so that they can steal their children. Research has documented both immediate and lasting harms associated with adverse child experiences related to poverty, intimate partner violence, maternal depression, and maternal substance use. You get the children to spy on these people so that they can then leverage that as an excuse to steal the children from the home. This is very well known and it's done all over the planet, and the evidence of it is not just found in these documents but also in numerous court cases. It's everywhere. It's very prolific. But when you read the questions on these adverse childhood experience questionnaires, it is disgusting. Foster care. While less than 0.5% of Durham's young children were in the foster care in 2015, those 166 children are also among those most likely to suffer the consequences of adverse childhood experiences. Don't these people control the foster system? One has to wonder. Nearly all placements, 96%, had neglected listed as the reason for foster care placement. Oh, so they got stolen from their homes because of neglect. But of course, there were probably a lot more children in these systems that conveniently got processed out and disappeared somewhere else. Followed by prenatal or parental drug addiction and physical abuse. And of course, physical abuse could be anything as simple as the child went up and kicked their parent, and then the parent smacked him in the face, and that's physical abuse enough to steal. It could be anything. It could be that the child got a mosquito bite, or the child playing slipped and fell and got a bruise, and then that's justification for them to break into the house, usually kill the parents under the order of some judge carried out by a sheriff or whatnot in the United States specifically, and then this child stolen and then sent somewhere to be sold into slavery for sex pedophiles or who knows what else. Homelessness. Children who are homeless have a higher risk of adverse childhood experiences, including health issues, hunger, education disruptions. Notice education disruptions is on that list. And exposure to violence. Like that wording there, exposure to violence. There were 190 children ages 0 to 8 who experienced homelessness at some point in 2016. Housing costs in excess of 50% of a household's income. Oh boy, we're seeing that going on today, and that is being done on purpose for this particular objective. Excessive housing costs may make it difficult for families to make ends meet and cause family stress. In Durham, 16% of children ages 0 to 8 live in a home that faces housing costs that exceed 50% of the household's income. That situation is currently going on where I live, where you have front companies and money laundering organizations connected to the probate judge, the one who processes real estate and is also the juvenile court judge, so that they can unilaterally raise rent and housing costs for everybody as an excuse to then steal their children. It's very obvious. Crowded housing. Oh, here we go. For young children, crowding has become associated with diminished cognitive development. In Durham, the rates are comparable to the rate average or state average of around 15%. However, Hispanic children in Durham are much more likely to live in households with more crowded conditions. And that's, of course, why they want all of that tracking information so they can find out who's susceptible to child trafficking, so that they can then easily steal those children and send them somewhere with no one the wiser, because they're just doing it for public safety, public health and safety, for the benefit of the community. Well, their community, as they see it. Parental education levels. Now, why am I not surprised that this is on their list? Higher levels of maternal education are associated with better birth outcomes and child development outcomes. Of course they are, because that's what they want. They want people who are beaten into regulatory submission and who accept their lot and will faithfully provide their children over to these academic creatures, and also their free labor, so that those people that can drive everybody else out take their children and kill them. In addition, education facilitates attaining and maintaining employment and helps individuals navigate public systems, teach their children skills such as vocabulary, and support their children's schoolwork. And of course, we have this one too: unemployment. Unemployment can cause financial and emotional strain in a household. More than 7% of young children in Durham live in a household where there are no working parents. And of course, we know what they mean by that. And now there's this highly disturbing image of two male children dressed as girls with butterflies, which, as we know, is a symbol for pedophilia, to do their creepy crap undercover. Data. In researching this report, we found that data are not available. We found that data are not available. That's interesting. That has to be a typo, or the person writing this is not, in fact, does not in fact speak English as their primary language. They're in fact English as a secondary language, possibly even from Europe. But who knows? We found that data are not available on many important health and well-being indicators for young children. Still should be data is not available. For example, we lack information on students' social and emotional development as they prepare to enter school. Similarly, we lack information on the number of young children who have developmental delays, suffer from food insecurity, or who are overweight. Of course, they need that information as their pretext. Given the importances of early interventions, there is that word there, interventions, is establishing a lifelong pattern of mental and physical well-being. It is important for Durham County to know in greater detail what issues its youngest residents face. And there you have more of that ownership language that is so disgusting. Its youngest residents. Because many cultures celebrate a harvest time or festival with which children can identify, this farm preschool curriculum unit is appropriate for a cross-culture setting, and child trafficking, of course. The farm unit is introduced to children through a field trip to a local farm. With children having the opportunity for experiential learning, the farm may be integrated into various curriculum areas in the classroom, and the playground may be transformed into a child-sized farm. This is so disturbing. It's just amazing how creepy this stuff is. 1995. Farm Play Center listed Christine Dolman. Permission to reproduce and disseminate this material has been granted by Christine Dolman, or Dollman. Dollmann. That is possibly one of the most disturbing names in relation to a farm play center. Early Childhood Research Center, State of University of New York at Buffalo. And this is a level 1 release. Just really disturbing stuff. Truly disturbing. Now here's the next one. A Guide to Ohio Outdoor Education Areas, 2nd edition. Ohio Academy of Science, Columbus. Ohio State Department of Natural Resources, Columbus. Camp Akita in Hocking County, 6 miles east of Sugar Grove on County Road 32. It is a base of operation for good cover. Akita has been used for school outdoor education workshops. And again, as referencing that other document, workshops in quotation marks does not necessarily mean just a meeting or somewhere for information to be digested. I know I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what it said. Akita is a member of the American Camping Association and is an ACAA accredited camp. The Buckeye Trail proceeds through the property, and some little developed trails lead into the fascinating woodland. Camp Registrar, Seal of Ohio, Girl Scout Council, P.O. Box, blah, blah, blah. Galloway. Galloway is very far from Hocking County. And here we have the name registration, December 21st, 2011. And then this lists date of first use is the 22nd of May, 1949. Camp Akita, First Community Church of Columbus, Ohio. Why am I not surprised? This lists 1320 Cambridge Boulevard, Boulevard in all caps, Columbus. That's really hard to say. Columbus Church. Camp Akita is a summer camp owned and operated by First Community Church of Columbus, Ohio. Lists Scott Nicol and Cindy Harsani as the signatories, both signed allegedly 11/17/11. 2011 Annual Operating Plan Activities, Akita Management. 1. Develop strategies for encouraging increased participation across program areas. Implement policy of collecting email addresses from all guests to be used in the promotion of facility rentals. Continue to refine ways to track and communicate with participants and members. Provide print information to guests of Akita telling them the story of First Community Church. Develop ways to cross-market between programs. Develop database of Akita users to utilize other program areas. Improve remote access to technology. Continue research and implementation of available technologies, improving technology cross access from remote location. Determine current facility needs at Akita North and South campuses and plan for completion. Develop long-range facility needs planned through Akita communities. Boy, I can only imagine the type of disturbing things that are going on at that particular place. Franklin County, Ohio, Deceased Child Review System working to eliminate preventable child deaths. 1992. Youth Network Council, Chicago, Illinois. Interesting. In 1988, Franklin County, Ohio. Children's Services initiated the development of a bi-level, community-based, multidisciplinary process to review all deaths of children in its open caseload. Database establishment. To determine the total number and cause of child deaths in Franklin County and to provide a detailed analysis, including various demographic factors to identify the number of deaths which involved elements of confirmed or suspected maltreatment or otherwise preventable. All data is kept confidential. The county team focuses on the recommended inter-system program changes resulting from the FCCS deceased child case staffings and act as an informed coalition of professionals to provide influence and raise support for the implementation of key child death prevention initiatives. I think we all know what that means. The County Deceased Child Review Team maintains an ongoing dialogue with the community via educational and community awareness activities. This dialogue occurs informally via the agency's involvement with the review process and through annual completion of a report which is released to the community. So yeah, more efforts in child trafficking facilitation, not prevention, facilitation. Cook County Grand and Grand Portage Early Child Needs Assessment. This is going to be more of the same crap. September 2021, Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, Together Through Life. In February 2021, Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, SMC, was awarded a 2-year community-based navigation model local community resource hub grant from the Minnesota Department of Human Services, or DHS. Year 1, 2021, research, year 2, and community partners, year 2, 2022, model implementation. Universal access, and this also lists children 5 years of age. That is an important thing to note there because of previous work, and specifically elements of individuals involved in child trafficking and molestation in some really heinous acts of children 5 years and younger. Child care is the greatest unmet need in Cook County. Again, it lists age 5, informal care from family and friends. They list as a problem. And it actually says, many parents are either relying on informal care from family and friends or not able to access child care at all. Don't you just love the cringy, creepy wording and the way that they portray stuff? But in actuality, these activities are violent, disgusting, and malicious. Screening for developmental concerns, family law, legal services, special education for support for children with disabilities, and home visiting. Respondents also mentioned residents not having access to living wage jobs or making too little money, according to them, of course. N equals 7. Related to income, lack of affordable housing in Cook County. Yes, and that's because they are unilaterally invested in gobbling up property using dark money and raising everything up to ridiculous levels so they have an excuse to steal and traffic children. Stakeholders were asked what organizations or roles were best positioned. Sawtooth Mountain Clinic and the local school district or child care centers, N equals 9, contact with families and act as a resource hub. So that's their infiltration technique, their method, their avenue of approach, if you will. Also mentioned staff and organizations Cook County wear many hats, stretched thin in their roles, responsibilities that aren't in their full job descriptions. Interesting. Public library may also be good options and for childhood programming, like you program a robot. Respondents also mentioned organizations sharing resources and materials or braiding funding together for common goals, N equals 3. The impact of locus of control on language achievement, Mohammed Al-Salamani, Nodushan, Iran Encyclopedia Compiling Foundation. LOC refers to whether individuals relate their success or failure to their own behavior. International Journal of Language Studies, 2012. Internalizers feel personally responsible for everything that happens to them in their lives, whereas externalizers believe their factors beyond their control determine what happened in their lives. Sounds like the same extrovert versus introvert crap that the academicians push today. College students with strong internal locus of control may believe that their grades were achieved through their own abilities and efforts, whereas those with a strong internal locus of control may believe that their grades are the result of good luck or bad luck and are hence less likely to work hard for their higher grades. It's very obvious what they're doing here. They're attempting to marginalize those with situational awareness. That's the term for it. It's situational awareness. It's knowing what's happening in your situation. And they're attempting to portray those that identify teachers as arbitrarily assigning grades as a mechanism for manipulating behavior as simply good luck or bad luck. They're saying anybody who has the situational awareness capacity to identify that their grades are coming from an external source, the teacher, are believing it's just good luck or bad luck. And surprise, surprise, they come to the conclusion that people with an external locus of control tend to be more stressed and prone to clinical depression. Of course they are. Because somebody who can tell what the academics are doing, that's a problem for them. They need to ensure that that person's medicated so they have no longer the situational awareness and capacity to identify the treason going on in front of their noses. Internals are able to resist coercion. That's obviously not true. Are less prone to depression and anxiety, are less willing to take risks. That seems a little bit contradictory, doesn't it? Less willing to take risks, but then they're less prone to depression and anxiety and better able to resist coercion. After failure, reevaluate future performances, lower their expectations of success, make better mental health recovery, and a long-term adjustment to physical disability. Of course, externals after failure may raise their expectations. I don't have any idea. Well, we do know what they're doing. Obviously, the objective here is to strategically identify and disrupt those who have perspective and can identify these patterns of conduct. Participants in the present study, N equals 198, were all Iranian EFL university students majoring in translation. N trans equals 59, literature N lit equals 73, and teaching English as a foreign language TFL, N TEFL equals 66. They belonged in different proficiency groups, beginner N big equals 58, lower intermediate N LI or LI equals 43, upper intermediate N UI equals 48, and advanced N A equals 49. 29 item scale of LOC developed by Rotter 1966 was used. It was a 29 item test, each containing 2 questions. The subjects were supposed to choose only one question according to what they feel and believe. 23 out of 29 of these items were intended to measure the kind of locus of control, and the other 6 items, blah blah blah, work as lie detectors, intended to show if respondents are taking the scale seriously. The answers to these 6 distractor items are not scored. Items which are used to measure subjects' locus of control questions labeled A receive 1 credit, these questions labeled B receive no credit. The questionnaire average is 8.28. Since the total scores made by each respondent suggest their kind of locus of control, those with 9+ score identified as externals and those with 9- score identified as internals. That is a primary example of how their establishment and setup is all about following regulations and rules blindly. And thus you understand why there's so apparently inhumane minions out there going around and doing nasty things and then get shocked and act like a victim when the consequences inevitably confront them. It's because of this. They identify those individuals who are more likely to blindly follow regulations of what they're told to do, and then they send those people out to commit treason and heinous acts that ultimately end in their deaths. And the people who really instigated it are not held to account. To measure participants' achievement, gain, and cumulative grade point average, GPA, across time is used No surprise there. A GPA is an internationally recognized measure which provides an overall view of students' performance in a program and is a leading indicator of students' achievement. In Iranian universities, a scale from 0 to 100 is being used for scoring students' test performance, wherein under 70 to 100 equals to good to excellent, 70 is the average point, 60 is passing threshold, and under 60 equals fail. That's the same thing they use here. The main aim of this paper, as it has already been delineated in the introduction section, was to address the question of whether kinds of LOC differentially affect achievement. Based on the values in the Wilks Lambda part of the multivariate tests table, see table 3, it was found that there was a statistically significant change in GPA as a result of locus of control. Yeah, no surprise there. That's called manipulation. And so that way they can control what people do, where they go, and how they live. And essentially control every aspect with the desire for domination. Conclusion. It was found in this study that internalizers were better achievers than externalizers. What a surprise. Although the observed difference between the two groups was not large enough to reach statistical significance, it was further noticed that other factors such as learners' motivation and teachers' inconsistency in scoring may also explain these GPA changes. Yes, it's the teacher's fault. Teachers and materials developers who work with lower intermediate students are recommended to pay closer attention in their profession to the impact of LOC on achievement at this language proficiency level. Of course, they're recommended to pay attention to that. Muhammad Ali Salmani Nodushan has received his PhD in Applied Linguistics from the University of Tehran, his MA in Applied Linguistics from the University of Isfahan, and his BA in Teaching English as a Foreign Language TFL from Shiraz University. He has also mastered IT and statistical analysis skills. He has over 20 years of teaching experience and has taught major EFL's courses at undergraduate and postgraduate levels. The main courses he has taught include language testing, English for specific purposes, and critical appraisal of language teaching methodology. He has published several papers in international scholarly journals, including blah, 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 blah. And so there's all that nonsense. Next, a course of study for adult farmer instruction in farm management and farm business analysis. And notice we have this little fun diagram here which has expense higher than income. University of Minnesota. Seems like that's their design. Make everything more expensive and your income be far less than your expenses, so they can of course steal all your stuff and push you into poverty so you become at risk and your children become adverse childhood statistics that they can then remove and put into the foster care system to be laundered through an adoption agency and then end up in Guayaquil or vice versa. Agricultural Education Department, University of Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, 1969. Enterprise classes. It is necessary to systematically provide an opportunity for the farmers in the community to get up to date on new production and management practices within the enterprise. Topics to be studied should be determined by the needs and interests in the community. The omission of courses studied for the mechanized farming and enterprise phases in this book was necessary because of limitations on space. This omission does not take away from the importance of either when weighed as part of the complete program of instruction for farmers in agriculture. And here we have this fun little diagram which lists community facilities, as you see there, and create leases and records, land, labor, and capital. Very creepy stuff. Now here in a breakdown of the home and family self-appraisal are all the fishing questions you would expect from these types of individuals. Have you been getting ahead financially during the time you have been farming? How likely is it for us to be able to steal your property, essentially? Do you consider your income adequate to meet farm, home, and family needs, retire debt, save for education, build equity? An attractive, comfortable, efficient house to meet family needs. Do all family members take pride in and enjoy their home? Do all family members enjoy entertaining friends in their home? Sounds like they're looking for avenues of exploitation. Are sleeping space and furnishings adequate for needed rest? Is equipment adequate for daily work, doing work easily, quickly, and well? Is the home easy to keep clean and uncluttered? Are home and community providing cultural development? Have you had a family vacation in the past 2 years? Is everyone given experiences in the handling money of his own? Does everyone in the family seem to be in good health? Do you have a definite plan for paying debts? I think we all know what they're fishing for there. And that is the primary reason why so much farmland today is being destroyed and turned into garbage that nobody needs. Ohio State University Columbus National Rural Crime Prevention Center, and here we get the other footfall, the second boot dropping. You know, those different sayings out there. Extension Service, Washington, D.C., Ohio State Department of Education, Columbus Agricultural Education Service. April 25th, 1979, in Fairfield County, Ohio. 32 participants were recruited representing local businesses, Chamber of Commerce, service clubs, juvenile court, law enforcement departments, churches, and all elementary and secondary schools. So the usual criminals and culprits and traitors. These participants represented two separate interests, laypersons and school teachers. Don't you love that word there they use all the time? Laypersons. It's like an illiterate. They're just poor and cold and hungry. Ugh. These participants represented two separate interests. Oh yeah, I already said that. Teachers' discussions emphasized the rural crime problem and reviewed available teachers' guides, while the lay-oriented discussions focused on identifying the nature and scope of county crime problems and what the county, community, and individual property owners can do to prevent or reduce crime. Of course, these are the minions going to their masters, academia, for directions on what their plan is going to be, what their mission to carry out is. Workshop sponsored by Fairfield County Resource Development Committee in cooperation with Fairfield County Schools, Lancaster City Schools, Ohio University, Lancaster, Ohio Cooperative Extension Service, OSU, Rural Crime Prevention Center, OSU, Ohio Division of Crime Prevention, Ohio Crime Prevention Association, Fairfield County Sheriff's Department, and Lancaster Police Department. Fairfield County Crime Prevention Workshop, Wednesday, April 25th, 1979, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., Ohio University, Lancaster, room 211. Vandalism and thievery, auto offenses, family fights, vandalism, and shoplifting. Vandalism, most often committed when youth were in groups, not alone. Vandalistic acts tend to be unreported. Property, how do they know that if vandalistic acts tend to be unreported? That's a question. Property most often vandalized involves school property, mailboxes, excavated buildings, and graffiti on public and private property. Sounds like they're doing this stuff as a pretext or excuse to start going after the quote-unquote criminal youth so they can, steal children, traffic them, and of course steal farmlands, homes, and people, and kill parents, and all of the nasty mayhem that these people instigate under the guise of chasing down vagrants or squatters or any of the other nonsense that they do. Ohio law not strong enough to deal with major juvenile problems. Theft of property was the most expensive crime to the community. Of course, they're talking about themselves there. Their property, as they see it. Not the property given to them by the people, but rather their property, lawfully according to them anyway, because they write the law, acquired. It's not the constitutional law or the supreme law of the land or the things that the U.S. Armed Forces swear allegiance to. No, it's theirs. Motivating factor, to use for pleasure seeking. Of course they would come to that conclusion. That your house that you live in is my property, and you're using it for pleasure seeking. Isn't that a disgusting perspective that we see proliferated everywhere today? The majority of the participants, no surprise here, felt teenagers were most often responsible for crime in Fairfield County. Isn't that nice? A trend similar to rural Ohio. Participants felt 14 to 18-year-olds were the age group most responsible for youth crime. Some members felt 10 to 14-year-olds were getting more heavily involved. The youngsters were believed to be members of the local community, not outsiders. Young families were viewed as today being involved more often. Of course! It's just these people are criminals, all of them that live in the area, and for their own good we must mandate and force them into facilities and places that we control. That is, of course, the perspective we're seeing here. Children needed to become more conscious of the consequences of their involvement in crime. Of course, you know what their definition of crime is. Youth lack of involvement in constructive outside activities, such as school, church, and sports. Oh, shocker, they came to that conclusion. Surprise, surprise. Child's lack of self-identity and feeling of personal worth. These people are disgusting that do this stuff. Increased ease of mobility, retaliation against school and educators. I wonder why that would be. Families renting property with parents not placing much importance on the value of the property. Lack of full-time police in some communities. Oh, yeah, their conclusions are so obvious. I wonder what those conclusions benefit. Oh, and here you go with the puffed up wording. The milieu provided by a local workshop is important if we are to avoid isolating our level of awareness within the boundaries of our backyard fence lines. It is here where ideas and experiences can constructively be shared. Isn't that nice? They're just sharing constructive experiences and ideas. We cannot directly see the benefits of using crime prevention measures. We will not know on an individual basis if practicing crime prevention is the cause for our not becoming a victim of crime. As we move to adopt the prevention concept to the rural crime problem, an active exertion or participation is required. Prevention requires we take some action before the fact. The common noun is used to describe this effort as proaction, or another applicable word is conquest. Only within the last few years have the duties of policing embraced the proactive concept of crime prevention. Yes, we know what they're talking about. Now we are moving in the direction of involving our rural communities in this effort. Crime prevention can be performed on an individual, family, and a community level, and indeed will sustain its greatest effectiveness when performed on a collective social basis. And thus their operational strategy comes full circle. Socialism, as we all know the term to be, but is in essence treason against the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Armed Forces, and the militia, and all the other people that should be killing these people. These are enemy combatants, after all. Strategies at summer camps. Summer camps in the United States operate in different contexts and formats to attract and serve youth with varying backgrounds. These include developing inclusive and equitable administrative policies, assessing and evaluating DEI in programs, and increasing access to camp by removing barriers and recruiting underrepresented campers. Staffing is another important focal point because employees create organizational culture. They also use DEI training to improve their employees' ability to act in ways that promote inclusion. This study aims to identify the frequency of specific DEI strategies used by camps, effective approaches to hiring staff from underrepresented backgrounds, and training strategies that support existing staff